Over the years, NASA has displayed some notoriously bad practices, and I have done my best to bring some of these to light, but there are two that continue to stand out to me. Number one, NASA does a terrible job of promoting themselves, demonstrating to the public and to everybody that supports them exactly why space is such an important thing and the types of positive applications their technology can be turned towards. Instead, the only thing we ever hear about is how much money these things cost, about all of the cost overruns, about all of the missed schedules, but about none of the positives. And then the other thing that NASA does that really contributes to this entire image, this negative image that the public perceives about them, is how they don't think outside the box when it comes to their own technologies. A lot of the more innovative things that NASA has done lately has capabilities that NASA has refused to exploit. Instead, they're trying to accomplish the same things that NASA did in the past, trying to recapture the past glory of going to the moon without making it clear as to why it's so important that we do return to the moon. And in the process of returning to the moon, NASA has ignored or simply failed to recognize all of the other things they could be accomplishing in the process, all of the things that their technology could do that could bring real economic benefit, real practical benefits to our civilization, and perhaps even save us from extinction. And if that sounds like a bit of an exaggeration, well, in the course of this video, I'm going to be talking about the Orion spacecraft and some of the capabilities of this spacecraft that have never been discussed until recently, and some new applications that an innovative thinker at NASA came up with that could not only make Orion a more useful and 100% reusable spacecraft, but could also save our civilization from threats like Apophis or even bigger asteroids. All of this and more coming at you on The Angry Astronaut right now. Good afternoon, spaceflight enthusiasts, and welcome to episode 2 of Spaceflight Week. Yesterday, we covered some more announcements from Pulsar Fusion, or rather some additional information that they provided on their fusion engine. If you haven't seen that, I strongly recommend you check it out because a lot of data that I wasn't aware of, including what the engine is actually capable of, how fast it can get us to Mars, how fast it can get us to Saturn, how fast it could execute a round trip out to the asteroid belt for asteroid miners. Lots of exciting stuff about that. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. I'll have that video linked at the end of this one, or it can also be found in the description. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about Orion. That's a spacecraft I think I've never really done a complete episode on, and for reasons that I think should be pretty obvious to a lot of people. Even though there's a lot to complain about when it comes to Orion, it's been insanely expensive to develop over the years, over $20 billion to develop this spacecraft. Of course, to be fair, that's over a long period of time. Orion has gone through a lot of evolution over the years. It was once part of the Constellation program under George W. Bush, that is. So yeah, we are looking at a long time to bring this spacecraft to maturity, and during that time, its mission changed a lot too. Originally, this spacecraft was supposed to go to the asteroids, and that was largely its objective during the time of the Obama administration, to help astronauts take missions out to near-Earth asteroids, explore those, etc., and also to have the flexibility to go to a number of other destinations in the inner solar system. And that is an ambitious goal and something that would have been really interesting to achieve had it stayed the same, but it just kept changing over and over again until it reached its current design, which of course is to go to the moon, but not to land on the moon, because Orion was never designed to land on anything, but rather just to get astronauts into the proximity of its eventual destination. So a very different spacecraft from Apollo, even though visually it very much resembles Apollo. So A spacecraft that isn't altogether exciting, a spacecraft that has cost a ridiculous amount of money, but at the same time, a spacecraft that has many, many capabilities that Apollo definitely didn't, and really that no other spacecraft currently possesses either. Unlike every other human-rated spacecraft that's being used by regardless of what nation we're talking about here, whether it be Russia, China, or the Crew Dragon, or Starliner, if you can really call that a human-rated spacecraft, any of the spacecraft that are currently in service, or indeed even going all the way back to the shuttle, Orion's capabilities are unique. This is a deep space exploratory spacecraft with an ambitious life support system that's capable of keeping astronauts alive for a considerable amount of time. Its official length of time to keep astronauts going is about 21 days, which is pretty long compared to every other spacecraft that's currently in service anyway, but that 21 days is really, really conservative. When I interviewed a representative from Lockheed Martin last year at Space Symposium, which, by the way, I'll be going to Space Symposium here in just a few hours, he informed me that that life support system is technically capable of continuing to function for months. So really a lot of unique capabilities of this spacecraft. But just recently, NASA has decided to explore other uses for Orion as well. It turns out, interestingly enough, that after a moon mission is completed, after Orion has done its job, and after the capsule portion of Orion is about to be reused, the service module might possess the capability to save our planet from an incoming asteroid like Apophis. This animation was created 11 years ago, and as you can see, SLS has gone through a lot of evolution over the years, but actually, Orion is not significantly different from its original design. It's important to remember that at this time, over a decade ago, Orion, at least an early test version of Orion, was actually launched into orbit by a Delta IV Heavy rocket to put the early prototype through its paces, which, by the way, it passed with flying colors. But let's go ahead and have a look at some of the components first. One thing that needs to be kept in mind is the abort system tower is officially part of this spacecraft, even though it's really part of the entire SLS system and not the spacecraft itself, but it requires a ridiculously powerful abort system in order to get it out of harm's way, because Orion is very, very heavy compared to every other human-rated spacecraft that's currently in service right now. The abort motor on this abort tower generates 400,000 pounds of thrust. We're talking almost as much thrust as a full-fledged Raptor engine. It's used for much, much bigger rockets. This abort system actually generates triple the thrust of the Super Draco cluster that's used on the Crew Dragon spacecraft and delivers higher G-forces to Orion than any other crew-rated vehicle experiences. Once again, to get the spacecraft out of harm's way, it doesn't have any other purpose besides that. And by the way, for the most part, the Super Dracos on the Crew Dragon have the same function. So let's move on to the crew capsule. And for the first time, I'm going to cover this in some detail. The underlying structure of the crew module is called the pressure vessel, and this consists of 7 large aluminum alloy pieces that are joined together using friction stir welding to produce a strong yet lightweight airtight capsule. The 7 major structural pieces include the barrel, tunnel, forward and aft bulkheads, and 3 cone panels. Original designs had 33 welded pieces, but the Artemis crew module and beyond have 7 welded pieces, making it simpler and improving manufacturability, saving more than 700 pounds of excess weight as well. The floor structure where the crew seats are attached and where the crew storage lockers are located is called the backbone assembly, which is a 9-piece bolted structure of crisscrossing beams. The backbone backbone made of aluminum also provides additional structural support for the crew module. Most of the equipment that the crew needs to survive in space, such as food, medical kits, emergency equipment such as masks and fire extinguishers, sleeping bags, and the pressure suits worn for launch and return to Earth are stored in lockers located here. Covering the pressure vessel is the protective cover on the sides of the crew module known as the back shell, made up of 1,300 thermal protection system tiles. The tiles are made of a silica fiber material similar to those used for more than 30 years on the space shuttle. The tiles obviously protect the spacecraft from both the coldness of space and also the extreme heat of entry into Earth's atmosphere. The bottom of the Orion capsule, which will be pointed into the heat as Orion returns to Earth, is covered by the world's largest ablative heat shield, measuring 16.5 feet in diameter. The heat shield will protect Orion as it enters Earth's atmosphere, traveling at about 25,000 miles per hour, which of course is much faster than re-entry for any other crew-rated spacecraft at the moment, and endure temperatures of nearly 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, or about half as hot as the surface of the sun. The outer surface of the heat shield is made of 186 billets or blocks of an ablative material called Avcoat, a reformulated version of the material used on the Apollo capsules. The Avcoat is bonded to a titanium skeleton and composite skin that gives the shield its shape and provides structural support for the crew module during descent and splashdown. During descent, the Avcoat ablates or burns off in a controlled fashion, transporting heat away from the Orion heat shield. The crew module includes a number of mechanisms that provide the way to enter and leave the module through hatches. It also includes mechanisms that provide docking capability for on-orbit activities with other spacecraft, as well as mechanisms for the separation or jettison functions from other parts of Orion when the crew module needs to separate for entry and landing. While the service module functions as the main propulsion system for Orion, and we'll be talking a lot more about the service module in this video, the crew module has a propulsion system also comprised of 12 small engines called RCS thrusters that provide full control of module translation and rotation both on orbit and during entry. When the crew module separates from the service module for entry into Earth's atmosphere, the 12 RCS thrusters control the spacecraft's return. The capsule also houses Orion's parachute system that ensures a safe landing for astronauts returning from deep space missions to Earth. The system includes a series of 11 parachutes that are deployed in a sequence to slow down the module from speeds exceeding 25,000 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour or less, providing a safe speed for splashdown at landing. The Orion is pretty tiny, only 330 cubic feet worth of habitable volume. However, that's compared to Apollo, which had 210 cubic feet, so it is substantially larger and also heavier. That being the case, though, the service module is really what sets this spacecraft apart in many respects. It is the powerhouse that fuels and propels the Orion spacecraft in space. It's, of course, located beneath the crew module, and it includes propulsion, thermal control, and electrical power generated by solar arrays. So this thing is essentially a spacecraft unto itself. It also provides the life support systems for the crew capsule, including water, oxygen, and nitrogen. And by the way, it uses an oxygen and nitrogen mix as opposed to Apollo, which utilized pure oxygen, which was much more dangerous and had to operate at a higher pressure in order to maintain the astronauts' breathing. The life support system also recycles water and atmosphere indefinitely. This is something that could keep astronauts alive a lot longer than 21 days, assuming, of course, that food doesn't run out. But as the Lockheed Martin representative told me, it could go a lot longer than 21 days in terms of keeping astronauts alive and safe. But let's go ahead and continue. In addition to its function as the main propulsion system for Orion, it's also responsible for orbital maneuvering and position control. This module is unpressurized, of course, and about 13 feet high, including the main engines and tanks for gas and propellant. It's designed, as I said before, for long-duration missions to deep space destinations. During launch, the service module fits into a 17-foot diameter housing surrounded by 3 spacecraft adapter jettison fairing panels. The panels offer protection from harsh environments such as heat, wind, and acoustics during launch. Once Orion is above the atmosphere, the fairing panels surrounding the service modules are jettisoned and the solar arrays unfold to span about 62 feet. During launch, Orion's service module will propel the spacecraft on its mission and help it return to Earth, detaching before the crew module enters Earth's atmosphere. But it is the post-detaching part that NASA is looking very hard at right now. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and wrap up the service module. To push Orion to its destination, the service module is equipped with a total of 33 engines. One main engine, which is a NASA-provided refurbished orbital maneuvering system engine called the OMSE, and also 8 auxiliary engines, which are NASA-provided Aerojet R4D11 engines. So the orbital maneuvering system engine, by the way, is from the space shuttle era. As a matter of fact, most of these engines have actually flown many times on the space shuttle before they're being used in the European service module. They provide a substantial amount of thrust, not nearly as much thrust as Super Dracos do, but again, the Super Dracos can only burn for about 25 seconds, therefore abort only, whereas the OMSE can perform a burn as long as 1,250 seconds, so a full-fledged propulsion system in space. Built by Thales Alenia Space in Italy, and by the way, just about all of the service module is built by European companies, hence the term European service module, but the primary structure of the service module is the backbone of the entire vehicle. Like the chassis of a car, the structure holds everything together. It is covered with Kevlar to absorb shocks from micrometeorites and debris impacts. During launch, the service module is held in place by the spacecraft adapter. The spacecraft adapter connects to the Orion stage adapter that attaches Orion to the SLS. A crew module adapter connects the capsule to the service module. The crew module adapter houses electronic equipment for communications, power, and control, and includes an umbilical connector that bridges the electrical, data, and fluid systems between the main modules. Computers control all aspects of the service module. Avionics manage the powered equipment and the data exchange services based on instructions received from Orion's flight computers in the crew module. Nearly 7 miles of cables send commands and receive information from sensors. Now, the service module's electrical power system provides power to the entire spacecraft. The system manages the power generated by the 4 solar array wings of the module. Each wing is made of 3 panels, and each panel is approximately 2 by 2 meters. I'm going to use meters wherever possible. NASA keeps using all of these old measurement systems. Again, that's fine. They're an American organization, and they put a man on the moon, for God's sake, so I guess we can stick with some of their measurements. The total length of each wing is nearly 7 meters or 23 feet. There are a total of 15,000 gallium arsenide cells on the 4 arrays used to convert light into electricity. Keep in mind, this is on the service module, therefore it has a lot of power unto itself, and the arrays can turn on 2 axes to remain aligned with the sun for maximum power. A power control and distribution unit provides the power interface between the service module and the crew module adapter, distributes electrical power to the service module's electrical equipment, and protects the power lines. Now, once again, here's a critical difference between Orion and Apollo. Apollo utilized fuel cells, power cells, in order to keep the spacecraft running. And of course, these were expendable, and these were power cells that only had a limited lifespan. Whereas with these huge solar panels, Orion can maintain power for the spacecraft essentially indefinitely. And that, combined with Orion's far more advanced life support system, makes Orion a deep space explorer, much more than just a moonship. But let's get on to other applications for the European service module, because if that can be reused for other purposes, it essentially makes the entire Orion spacecraft a reusable spacecraft, or at least something that's going to be able to carry out multiple missions. Right now, of course, the service module burns up in the atmosphere, like the service modules associated with every human-rated spacecraft. But according to a NASA-sponsored paper entitled Low-Cost Mission Opportunities Using Repurposed Artemis European Service Modules, that could be a very different scenario for future missions. According to the paper, quote, "The European Service Module is the element of NASA's Artemis program that returns the Orion's crew module to Earth. After the separation of the crew module, the current plan is to destroy the ESMs by burning them up in the atmosphere. However, the ESM is a capable spacecraft, complete with propulsion, power generation, conditioning and distribution, attitude control, thermal control, and payload support. By leveraging the propulsive capabilities that remain following crew module separation, the ESMs have the potential to provide near-term, low-cost opportunities on a notionally yearly cadence to achieve valuable science across an array of extended mission types." JPL hosted a scientific workshop in the summer of 2024 with U.S. and European participants to discuss potential ESM extended mission targets and types. During the workshop, the participants jointly assessed the benefits that could be derived from repurposing the ESM for scientific use after it completes its primary mission. The concepts considered were divided into three categories. Number one, with no augmentation of the ESM, just use it as is. Number two, minimal augmentation. And number three, low to moderate augmentation. Target accessibility was determined by reasonable trajectory analyses. Once again, keep in mind, the ESM has a substantial amount of propulsion capabilities, giving it access to a wide variety of targets inside the inner solar system. Now, there's a minimally augmented case which favors missions where the ESM simply slams into a target and is observed by ground or space-based observing systems. Targets of interest include asteroids or the moon and Phobos or Deimos. Now, augmented mission concepts would carry up to 300 kilograms of additional payload, which the ESM is definitely capable of doing. And this includes impactor missions with instrumented observer spacecraft, single or multiple asteroid flybys, asteroid landers, and near-Earth asteroid rendezvous. The exploration of near-Earth objects figured prominently as there are many diverse, unexplored classes of near-Earth and main belt asteroids that could be reached with the European Service Module after its primary mission. Keep in mind also, this was the kind of mission that Orion was supposed to be carrying out in the first place. So some of these asteroids are associated with water, such as 24 Themis, others like metals, 216 Cleopatra, and others may present impact hazards in the future. The European Service Module, in principle, could tour several diverse asteroids, rapidly accelerating our understanding of these worlds. Another concept highlighted the capability to use the ESM as a large kinetic impactor, sending it to impact a suitable near-Earth object. The European Service Module has a dry mass 7 times larger than that of the spacecraft used on the successful DART mission. Another exciting possibility is to send the ESM back to the moon for a targeted impact into a permanently shadowed region to excavate subsurface material, potentially including water. The ESM has twice the mass of the L-Cross mission, which was used to discover water ice on the surface of the moon in the first place. The plume from the impact could be observed from Earth or from other spacecraft, and the creation of a fresh impact crater in the Artemis exploration zone would provide an exciting target for subsequent crewed exploration. The Delta V available for an ESM extended mission may even allow it to reach Mercury or the Jupiter system with minimal additional payload. This capability raises the possibilities of flybys to observe craters that were created by the disposal of the Bepi-Colombo and Messenger spacecraft into Mercury, and the JUICE and Europa Clipper spacecraft at Ganymede. Doing so would provide observations of the fresh material exposed by the cratering process, as well as mapping of the crater morphology and ejected distribution for an impact of known impactor mass and kinetic energy. Another option would be to send 2 ESM spacecraft to these targets targets, using one to observe the crater made by the impact and its companion into the target. In a recently published study, a long-term communications asset in Venus orbit was identified as a high-priority need to replicate the success of a Mars relay network. Interestingly, an ESM equipped with a software radio such as the Electra package and placed into a high-altitude orbit at Venus would be a powerfully enabling infrastructure for future in-situ aerial and surface-based missions to the second planet. We invite the community to explore the possibilities to achieve tantalizing, opportunistic science at a lower cost than a comparative standalone mission. Finally, NASA is thinking outside the box. This would be an opportunity to get a lot more science and an entirely different interplanetary mission out of these incredibly expensive Artemis SLS missions. And instead of being an Apollo minus spacecraft, Orion could live up to its potential of being a true interplanetary explorer. So yeah, exciting stuff. Again, technically, Orion might become the first 100% reusable spacecraft in service. It's kind of difficult to believe that something like Orion, something designed by the old boys in spaceflight, could possibly have that kind of utility, but it turns out, perhaps even by accident, that that's how all this worked. So you saw in the video, a spacecraft that has reusability both in terms of its capsule, always had that capability, but also on the part of the quite amazing service module. And the reason, of course, that it's reusable also is the fact that it was based on a reusable spacecraft in itself, an unmanned spacecraft, but nevertheless a spacecraft capable of operating on its own. As you've seen, an amazing array of uses for this spacecraft over and above the limited Artemis applications. And I kind of think that that's where NASA needs to be looking, and really spaceflight in general, especially given the fact that funding for space, especially government space, NASA and otherwise, is going to continue to drop, I think, over the course of the next few years. Innovative methods of making do with what we have, doing more with less, is going to be the key to succeeding in space during these lean times for the administration, lean times for NASA, and indeed maybe even lean times for companies like SpaceX and Rocket Lab. It appears, given the current state of the economy, that there isn't going to be a lot invested in spaceflight compared to previous years. And hopefully that will change, but in the meantime, there's no reason why any of this has to stop. Just because the faucet has been turned off a bit doesn't mean that there's nothing left to drink. And the more innovative that NASA becomes, and the more innovative that other spaceflight companies become, doing more with less, which, by the way, is what European spaceflight companies have been doing all along. One of the reasons why I report on them like I do. Doing more with less is going to be the key to taking us to the moon, to Mars, and elsewhere, regardless of what the government decides to do. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. As I say, in a few hours, I'm going to be heading to Space Symposium, so expect some incredible content coming here in the very near future on this channel. And also, if you'd like to support my journey here, again, I'm running a bit in the red on this whole thing. All the details are in the description, and I really appreciate the support I've received thus far. Thanks again for watching, and as always, stay angry about space.